Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. Apologies for being a few minutes late. It's ironically we need to ensure that we have technical problems. That's the importance of resilience. So I've moved from PC to laptop. So apologies for being a few minutes late. So we're focusing today on the Microsoft Cloud roadmap to transforming public services. My name is Leon Godwin. I am the Principal Cloud Evangelist at Cloud Direct. I am massively passionate about AI, and I talk a lot about cloud adoption and some of the opportunities that are available for different types of organizations. I'm prolific on LinkedIn, so if you'd like to follow me, there's lots and lots of interesting stories I drop there, usually several times a week. And my role is I'm a free of charge resource, and my job is to share my knowledge and experience with prospects, customers, colleagues alike to assist them on their cloud journey. So let's get into it. So public sector, there are changes going on in public sector. There's a shift in terms of traditional on-prem deployments. We've witnessed that for a few years now. There are budget constraints that like never before, and to be fair, they haven't been good for a while now. The emerging security threat landscape is becoming more sophisticated, and local government organisations are a prime target for that. And we're seeing that cloud adoption is something that many local governments are looking into, and they are at different levels of that journey. Some are quite mature in that journey, some have yet to start that journey. So what we're needing to do is look at the opportunity space for these organisations whilst being conscious of the security and the budget restrictions. So some of the challenges that I see with local governments is you have lots of data. Data is one of your most valuable assets, and so optimising the use of that data is of particular importance in local government. In healthcare, it's around improving the quality of service and care whilst balancing budgets. Housing, they have I've had many calls with housing agencies recently. They have many different initiatives that are taking place to be able to deliver better services, but once again, budget constrained. And within education, there is a large amount of appetite for consuming more technologies and providing digital learning type capabilities. So there are a number of different challenges, because the one thing they all have in common is budget challenges. So what I'm going to do in this webinar is I'm going to walk you through the 7 building blocks, and let's listen to the recurring theme of budgets as we go throughout this, because potentially there are opportunities to do things more cost effectively or through grants. So step 1 on your cloud journey is migrating to the cloud. Some of you in the audience may already have migrated to the cloud, and some of you are maybe have a partial footprint in the cloud. Some of you have yet to make that cloud change. But I just want to touch on some of the consideration points within this presentation as it relates to migration. And then it's about getting cost under control when it is in the cloud, and there are lots of opportunity spaces there. I'm going to touch on security. Obviously, that threat landscape is becoming ever more sophisticated, and then we'll talk about modernising applications in the cloud, and I'll give you some examples of other organisations and what they've done within the public sector to modernise their applications. Then we'll look at your data, your most valuable asset, being able to maximise the value from that data, and how that can then drive analytics and insights, and then the introduction of AI into the public sector. AI, as I previously said, it's a big passion project of mine. I was just building an interactive voice-enabled conversation AI last night, and I'm very pleased with the results. It's kind of effective. So let me steam into the migration step. Now, when it comes to migrating, when it comes to local government, there is a well-architected framework, and there's a cloud adoption framework. These are frameworks that are provided by Microsoft for migrating workloads into the cloud. So the well-architected framework is built on reliability when your PC doesn't behave when you're trying to do a webinar, cost optimization to ensure you're maximizing. I've got some really interesting examples to show you. Operational excellence, performance efficiency, and security. So straight away we can see that some of those challenges we've already identified at the beginning of the call, two of those things are already present within this well-architected framework. So effectively, looking at that well-architected framework, it's about guidance and best practice of how you can adopt it. There is a link on the screen. If anyone's interested in the content of this deck, please reach out and we will supply this deck to you. There are a number of useful links and resources in the notes and what have you, and we're more than happy to go and share that with you. So cost optimization, I will drill into that in a moment as to what the opportunity space available to you is, as well as drilling more into the security side of things. I have separate webinars that focus exclusively on the well-architected framework, and you'd be more than welcome to join me on those. Failing that, you can go into YouTube and see some previous sessions that are from our YouTube channel. So when you are looking to move to the cloud, obviously for some of you in the audience, this step may not be perfectly relevant because you may have already be further down that journey. But one of the things I think is terribly important is too many organizations treat the public cloud as an alternative hosting environment to VMware. Using that mindset means you will not be benefiting from all the other capabilities of the cloud, which are huge. So taking less of an IT-centric and technology-centric approach, but looking more at your business needs, understanding what your needs are, your needs of your stakeholders, your students, your patients, your citizens, your taxpayers, also your internal stakeholders, understand what their needs are and what your overall objectives are, and then actually measure how this change is going to benefit them, because that is it's all about measurable outcomes, not about treating it as an alternative hosting environment. Then develop a migration strategy following the best practice approach as laid out in something called the Cloud Adoption Framework. Analyze your budgets and costs prior to help you build your business case prior to migration. And I was doing a webinar yesterday where I was talking about the need to actually assess the different initiatives in your organizations, and don't just say this is the total cost of change and this is my IT budget, but actually break that down and understand how specific change programs and what the costs of those are, and are they actually driving the benefit? Is that an activity that is worth doing? Or is the ROI never going to be attractive enough, and maybe it isn't an activity that's worth doing? So actually break down and get that granular view rather than just the holistic sort of P&L type approach. And then make sure that you are ready for that change. But whether that be staff, adoption, training, best practice, there's a whole wealth of resource there. But one of the most important things for when it comes to cloud adoption success is do it with people, not to people. So engage your stakeholders. And here are sort of 4 stakeholder groups that I think are really important to have as part of this project, or any change, to be honest, when it comes to cloud. Your board members, your leaders, your councillors, your senior stakeholders should understand what the change is, what is going on, and take it to be an active participant within the project. Likewise, finance should be involved because there is a change from a CapEx based to an OpEx based model. Having that granular breakdown, having those business cases for each, whether it be departmental or business function, whatever it may be, having that granular breakdown of the business case so finance can start getting more detailed insights into what and why certain elements are being spent. Bring in legal and bring in your end users. When you have that kind of journey and stakeholder engagement, you're much more likely to achieve success. Ironically, you would imagine that cloud adoption success rates are actually improving, but they're actually getting worse because there is a shortage of skilled resources that are expert in executing against this. So organizations often adopt for a DIY approach. Unfortunately, that sometimes misses the nuance of some of the elements that are involved, and so the failure rates actually improve because of the greater percentage of those going down a DIY route. Now, going back to the budgets, which will be a recurring theme, funding pathways available. So one of the things that we do, and we do better than anyone else in the UK, is at Cloud Direct, we work very, very closely with Microsoft, and as such, we have secured more funding from Microsoft for our clients than any other organisation in the UK. Not only that, we actually bring some skin to the game in terms of providing funding ourselves. So whether it be a single, joint or funding opportunity, there are many, many available. So Microsoft have introduced, there is an underlying budget within the UK that is sort of carved up into various buckets. Azure Migrate, if you are looking to migrate, then there are funding avenues available for workshops to understand the scope of the change required, to undertake discovery activities, to understand your estate, build out certain elements and achieve design and migration activity. There are funding pots available. Whether you're looking to optimize what you've already got, so maybe, you know, step one is you're at the beginning of the cloud, but step two, maybe you're looking to do more in the cloud or get your costs under control. That is a big recurring thing. We will provide workshops for you for that activity. If you're looking to modernize your applications, and that's a really, really exciting opportunity space, there are funding pots available there. Recently, Microsoft have announced a £100 million investment in the data and AI funding pot, the innovation pot. So there are lots of different funding opportunities available for you to be able to do more with less. So a migrate workflow would follow the process of, we would do a workshop, we'd understand, we'd explain what the well-architected framework is, you will explain your business drivers, your imperative, and how we will work out how a migration project could align with your business needs, and tuning the outcome accordingly. But it's setting that foundational understanding in terms of us understanding your business needs, you understanding the best practice approaches. Then we deploy technology to go and undertake an assessment, and then we build out a landing zone. I will not go into too much detail of a landing zone, but effectively it's your digital scaffolding that allows you, if you're building a house, you'd have walls, doors and windows first, and you'd partition this house up into different rooms to service particular functions. You do the same thing in the cloud. You build it out before you bring your furniture in, before you bring your workloads and your data in. You make sure it's appropriately configured. And then any proof of concepts and design activities and deployment activities, those can all be funded. So we did recently an activity with Baines Council, and hello if you're on the call. They had a number of compelling events, one of which was hardware was going end of life, and they had some compelling reasons they wanted to change. They wanted to engage more in an online self-service type engagement, and their infrastructure was not able to facilitate that online engagement, legacy infrastructure. So what we did was we did an assessment. We migrated a large number of their estate to the cloud. We helped set up a cloud center of excellence that basically meant that they were operating with a governance mindset into adopting cloud. And there were a number of benefits, not least of which was a 70% reductions in the cost of change was covered by Microsoft and by Cloud Direct through funding pots. And what they ended up with was a highly successful funded migration that mitigated the risks. We also provided a short-term managed service whilst their Azure Cloud Centre of Excellence expanded and matured, enabling them to actually take on the management of their estate themselves. So to sort of recap, migration, the mindset needs to be about doing more with less. So optimize your use of resources. Make sure that you are following the well-architected framework to make sure you achieve compliance. Use the tools that are available to you to engage your citizens, and there are many. Where you are budget constrained, actually make sure you've got your business case in place that actually makes sure that you are operating within budget, but there are an array of other tools that can go and assist with that. Use a reliable infrastructure, not a new PC that you haven't built properly that doesn't actually operate in Teams for some reason. And we reviewed the example of Baines Council. So there are a number of tools and capabilities, and obviously this is just a short webinar with 7 steps, so there is a lot more detail behind that, and we'd be more than happy to discuss those with you. So when it comes to getting the costs under control, there are a number of cost levers you can pull on. Size for what you need, not what you have. When it comes to VMs, lots of local governments, a large portion of local governments use things like VMware-based platforms. And traditionally what would happen, and I've been parachuted into lots and lots of local governments, for example, and they would have, you know, a bunch of SAN and storage and some servers in a rack in a basement somewhere, and they would over provision the CPU. So one vCPU, you might have 7 vCPU cores equal to 1 CPU core on the server, whereas in Azure it's 1-to-1. So actually you may be in a position to say, well, if I look at what I have, I've got 4 CPUs, but actually maybe I only need 2 because it's a much more modern PC. The processor is 5-7 years more modern, and there isn't this contention ratio. Another thing that I did was a number of years ago, I've done dozens, hundreds of assessments, and I actually did a study of looking at through all my assessments, and what I discovered is the average CPU utilization across all those organizations was 19%. The average RAM was 48%. So what we know is there was a significant amount of over provisioning going on. Add that to the things I just mentioned, there are lots of opportunities to size for what you need, not what you have. Contracting options, moving up the clouds, like adopting PaaS services instead of IaaS services, can drive savings. Does 100% of your infrastructure need to be on 100% of the time? Almost definitely not. And where are those opportunity spaces? If you have infrastructure that is on 12 hours a day, 5 days a week for certain departments, let's say, that is roughly 264 hours. There are roughly 730 hours in a month. That means you're saving 2/3 of the compute costs by running some automation to schedule that capacity. An example of this would be if you were to buy a VM, you could buy the same VM, something in Azure called a D2V3. Basically, it's 2 CPUs and 8 gigs of RAM. I can buy it for £112 a month. Or I could buy it with pulling on different levers. Some I'm running with reserved instances, which is a commitment to say I'm going to have that machine for 3 years or 1 year, whatever it may be, or run it in different hours, or bring my own license, or use something called spot instances. And I can get the same outcome for very different prices, depending on my particular needs. Too many organizations just go pay as you go when they don't look at the other cost saving levers. And as you can see, they can be profound. So it's about being responsible with your cloud costs. you have expenditure challenges. I've already showed you with that in stage one, the funding pathways that are available. When it comes to cost optimization, there's also things that we can do in that space to go and help, and workshops that we can hold. But getting those costs and that expenditure, understand the strategic use of that investment. You've got accountabilities to your taxpayers or external stakeholders or whomever it may be. You want to be prudent with your financial management of these systems going forward, and you want to have that sort of reporting and regulatory compliance with that. And so Azure provide a whole bunch of tools, and in the interest of space, there are actually many more tools available to you that can help support that outcome. But things like cost management, Azure Advisor, Azure budgets, pricing calculators, all these things can help contribute to putting in place a well-costed, well-controlled and cost-optimal cloud deployment. Step 3 in the process is confidence in the security of the cloud. Now, there are many different stories that go on around cyber. A lot of it is down to the legacy infrastructure, misconfigurations, underinvestment, and they can lead to a number of different challenges. One of the touchstones is the Cloud Adoption Framework, which is a secure methodology for using Azure. So you would start off and say, okay, right, well, security has to be a balance between, my business alignment and what are my business goals. But we also need to make sure that we have our security disciplines in terms of access, secure operations, you're protecting your assets, you've got your governance in place, and you're able to deliver and enable innovation around security. Because in a traditional CapEx life cycle, you will buy probably a very expensive Cisco, Palo Alto, some piece of equipment, security information event management, whatever it is, but it tends to be on a 5-year or longer life cycle, and which means that innovation and that capability isn't necessarily as up to date. Whereas in the cloud, the innovation is much faster, and you can adopt and deploy very quickly. And when something better comes along, you can stop paying for that, and you can start paying for that instead, and drop that different service in to be able to meet the prevailing demands and threat landscape. And your cloud security team need to be aware of those business alignment and those different security disciplines and what the cloud can do. This delves down into a lot more detail. Again, I do webinars in more detail on this one, but it's something that anybody it doesn't matter if you are already in the cloud or you're yet to go in the cloud, this methodology applies to anyone, even if you've been in the cloud for years. Review this to make sure that your operations are as they should be. The goal is about being able to change and be responsive to needs, but doing so in a safe and secure manner, and making sure everything you're doing, you have the insights and the performance that you need, and that the security isn't going to harm that, but likewise it's giving you that confidence. And we'll give you an example of how a council in the north of England, they took a very innovative approach to the adoption of security, because rather than just say we're going to focus on our needs, they actually decided to build their own security operations centre and make it available to other public sector organisations in the Northwest. So they did a migration of their security services into Azure Sentinel. And that information was then backed up with personnel in a secure operations centre that they could actually then take to market to other councils and public sector organisations in the Northwest. And I think that's an innovative approach. So over 90% of its technology now has been migrated to be managed by Sentinel. It gets real-time access to threats. And more and more over the years, I've seen initiatives. Bolton and Wigan Council did a joint initiative. I know in the Southwest there was a Southern Council initiative for an ITO and BPO a number of years ago. More and more I'm seeing this kind of collaborative approach. I see it a lot in the non-profit sector as well, and I think that's kind of interesting. So the idea of actually taking these services, using that investment, not only for the benefits of citizens and their community, but ones beyond. So Azure has a number of different environments depending on your particular needs. There is the government-led Azure services. So these are specific data center services that are dedicated towards government. There are a whole load, just lots and lots of templated tools and best practices and security postures that are relevant to public sector that are available at a click of a button, which makes adopting cloud much easier when it comes to Azure adoption. And likewise, and the same is true for risk management. Obviously, there are data centers throughout the UK. And so the data sovereignty side of things has been fully addressed, and there is a dearth of resources, especially for public sector organisations, that's constantly being released. And I know certain organisations are working collaboratively to share that knowledge amongst public sector organisations. Okay, so then we'll look at modernising in the cloud. So once again, there is funding opportunities available. Modernising is really, really cool, and I would encourage people that are yet to migrate to focus their effort on rationalisation. There's a huge amount of cost savings from rationalisation, but once you're in the cloud, there may be opportunities to modernise and do things better and smarter in the cloud. So once again, there are funding pots available from following the same kind of structure, but just coming from different budget pots, and where you can focus on which application is going to that you'd like to modernize. It might be a bunch of them. As a general rule, I say platform as a service where you can, infrastructure as a service where you have to. The cost savings and benefits are greater here than they are here. So I would strongly encourage you to consider the platform as a service, and then think about how that modernisation, and going back to the business case, how is that modernisation going to empower your taxpayers, your stakeholders, your students, whomever. So some local government examples could be, under buckets, and to be honest, again, screen real estate, there are hundreds of these examples. But you may be focusing on your application modernisation. The focus may be around improved delivery, cost efficiency, community engagement, sustainability. There's a whole raft of different buckets they more fall under, and underneath them, discrete projects such as digital permitting systems, online payment portals, resource management, digital town halls, Wi-Fi, IoT type smart city integrations. I've seen a lot of that going on in the housing sector, lots of sort of IoT going on there. A really interesting case, and this is actually available for a deeper read, is actually available from Microsoft's website. I found this one really, really cool because I thought it was a really clever example of modernisation. So Leeds Hospital, they said, right, well, we have an electronic patient record system that has X amount of utility, the way it's adopted today. But what they chose to do was improve upon that, deliver 200 electronic whiteboards. So instead of the nurse's station that had the electronic patient record, or indeed in some cases where it was still paper-based records on the end of the bed, they would deploy these whiteboards to the wards. Then they also delivered a mobile phone app variant so they could take this information and make it available to clinicians. And what they ended up having was 7 million electronic whiteboard requests coming per month, whether it's on the phone or whether it's on these whiteboards. So it's real-time access to patient information, not just when they're at the nurse's station, but wherever they are in the hospital. they gain access to that information in real time so they can understand and deliver better quality care to their patients. A really good example of modernising within the cloud. And obviously that was subject to funding from Microsoft as well. So when it comes to modernisation, think about what is your strategy. How, one of my touchstone phrases is, if it doesn't achieve one of the three, better, faster, cheaper, then don't do it. So what is your strategy that's going to make life better for your citizens, for example, that's going to make things better, faster, cheaper, or internally in terms of your operations against those? Any change should touch at least one of those. If it doesn't, it probably isn't an activity worth doing. So look at holistically, what is my strategy for modernisation and how can I do that? And how can I potentially use money that I will save from bloated infrastructure as a service, move up the cloud stack, delivering a better outcome where it is paid for either by funding from Microsoft or cost savings that come from and moving away from bloated infrastructure as a service to, so you now are doing more with less. So leverage those funding opportunities. Try to focus on service delivery in terms of what are the opportunity spaces to improve those, and then go and explore examples. I would encourage you to go to Microsoft's website where there is hundreds and hundreds of examples of how public sector organisations, health, education, lots of different examples of changes they've made, and then think, okay, I think that would be really good for our organisation, and there is an opportunity space here to actually fund it either from Microsoft or by saving budgets by making a change from your bloated infrastructure, whether that be on-premise or you've already migrated it, but you've just treated it as a hosting environment in Azure and you're still paying bloated costs. Moving that up the cloud stack can free up budgets to make additional change. So then we can talk about modernising data. Now this is where everything I've said up until now, this is, you know, it's interesting, it's best practice, everyone should be doing it, but it's nothing, it's best practice that's been around a while. As we go forward in this webinar, the things of interest is around data and AI, because I believe those are the opportunity spaces that will deliver the most value to your stakeholders. So having a modernised and accessible data in the cloud presents a number of opportunities. So having interconnected public services can deliver better services. Having, when you have interconnected data, you can reduce inefficiency and have a more coordinated approach to your data. And when you can see your data holistically, it's much more easy to benchmark the evidence of the effectiveness of the policies that you roll out, rather than everything just being discrete, separate bucketing. Oh, that's sales data, that's finance data, that's CRM, it's someone else's data. Actually, just treat data as a single asset. And when you can see all the data and you can measure all the data, then you can measure the effects of policy changes against that data. When you've got a holistic approach to data, you can solve problems much more quickly. I actually give an example here about the COVID pandemic. Think of the change that took place there, and then suddenly the distributed workforce and the fact that they now need to be able to carry on and deliver services, whether that be in healthcare, whether that be in schools, whether that be in local government. There was still a requirement for, they didn't just stop existing. They still had a requirement, but people need data to do their jobs. Doctor needs electronic patient information. Students need access to curriculum information and to teachers. And so having that data accessible holistically enables you to solve those problems quicker. Some organisations, however, didn't have that holistic approach. And so their response to the pandemic took longer and was suboptimal. And also, when all the data is kind of available and holistically addressable, it actually makes management of it a lot easier. So I'm going to skip through some of this animation so I can sort of talk about it holistically. But if you want to ask yourself a question, how do we set the correct conditions so that I can make my data more available, more accessible, more usable? But how do I protect specific organisation or certain entities, ensure their rights are protected, whether it be people or organisations? What are your motivations? Are you looking at championing a data-driven approach within your organisation? Are you looking to reduce regulatory burden? There are a number of different motivations, and then you can sort of break it down into sort of compartmented jobs. And my focus is on, my outcome I'm looking to achieve is boosting productivity, to fuel job creation, to secure my next innovation, whatever it may be. And within that, the government has a data quality framework, and there's a URL on the screen. Each one of those bullet points on the last box on the top right, those are hyperlinks to take you to more information about that, and I will just discuss some of those. So as you move, if you're saying, right, I've got a data strategy in place, it is available to me, now what? Well, now you want to be able to exploit that data, make the asset deliver the value that's locked within. So having a modern data analytics platform is going to be crucial. Having the appropriate governance and controls into your holistic data set, ensuring your data is of the right quality. And there are 6 pillars of data quality, and I'll give you a little demo of that in a minute. Make sure you can visualize. I think the problem with data is the value of data is often in the information it has, and turning data into information can be very compelling, because it's the information that empowers leadership to make strategic decisions based on that data. And then there's the use of generative AI within that data landscape. So an example of a modern data platform would be Microsoft Fabric. It has a number of different capabilities. I've carved some out, but in terms of that modern platform, you've got its ability to integrate with data, whether it's on-prem or off-prem. You can do your data engineering, you can do your data warehouse and have that storage, so you can change your data, you can manipulate your data, you can store your data, and if you want to introduce machine learning, you can go and do that. If you want to have an activity that when certain conditions are met, I want to go and do X, Y, and Z with my data. So effectively automated actions off the back of the data. Fabric can go and do that. Touching on the 6 pillars, there are 6 pillars to data quality: uniqueness, completeness, accuracy, timeliness, consistency, and validity. These are ways that you should assess your data. So as I did a presentation, I work with a colleague, Dr. Victoria Holt, and she is a data scientist and much better than I am. And she had an idea, and I happen to have the skills. So we thought, wouldn't it be fun to go and build an AI solution that could go and do this and do that assessment for you? So I did. And this is just a little video. I built this, and there is an AI in the background. So when I click on the uniqueness, it's sending a data set to an AI in a secure environment. It's analysing that data for uniqueness, and we find that 10% of that data is not unique, it's duplicate data. And then we repeat it for the other pillars. It takes the data set, it sends it to an AI, it analyses it, it benchmarks it, it scores it based on the set of rules that I built. Now, bearing in mind, I don't know code at all. I mean, I cannot stress that enough. .NET is the end of my email address. Python is a snake. I have no Scooby-Doo, but this was very pointy clicky, using the tools. And the great thing is most of the tools that I was using here were already part of my Microsoft 365 subscription, and they probably are in yours already. So this was a Power App front end with some Power Automate at the back end, and then a connection to Azure AI model. It was very simple. If I can do it, imagine someone who knows what they're doing could do. And so I thought this was like a novel way of showing you something, and I built this in like about a day and a half. Somebody knows what they're doing would be much quicker. So another example of a public sector organisation who are taking a more data-centric approach. was the Environment Agency. So they were on this journey where they wanted to maximize the use of their data, ultimately to improve that regulatory oversight and the environmental protection obligations for which they're tasked. So initially they did an activity to look at all their applications, and then they said, right, this is what we're going to do, and they went and secured funding to make some of this change. And ultimately they looked at replacing a whole load of applications by using the native capabilities of Azure and Power Platform. So I just showed you Power Platform in terms of that Power Apps and Power Automate element, and this led to a load of savings within their organizations, and everybody that was engaged with the new sets of tools recognized the benefits, 100% satisfaction in terms of the benefits and the visibility of those benefits. So being able to say, right, I've got these applications that do this, but I've got the data, do I actually need to pay for that application? Because that application is a front end. Think of, like, it's not a terribly good example, payroll. It's a database and it's an application. Actually, I've got the data in the database. Do I actually need to go and pay a third party loads of money for this application? I have the data. I just want to be able to read it and add more records to it. Maybe I'll just build something myself using, your digital, your citizen-enabled developers, whether it be, members of your, I did it. I built an app that used AI. It was purely for demo purposes, but I've built loads and loads of applications in this kind of space saying, right, there is a data set, I'm paying loads of money for this application, does this function, and I'm only using like 10% of this application. Why don't I just build something purpose built for my needs, and I control that application, and I break away from that, what we call the app gap. You buy an application, it has a function, you have to fit in with that capability of that application. You can go and move on. So when you do like the Environment Agency, you're ingesting your data and you're integrating your data into your business processes, you start to get some traction and some value. When you've got a tool set like Fabric that is capable, or the Azure platform itself, that allows the facilitation of proper data governance, that gives you some advantages. To be able to analyze data across multiple different platforms is really, really key, because again, if you are having an effect somewhere in your organization, positive or negative, we think of it as, that affects that department, that data set, that process, whatever, but actually you can have ripple effects, and actually having that analytics platform to look holistically across stuff starts giving you more useful information. And having the tools available to be able to validate your data against the 6 pillars of data quality can be really valuable. There's a lot of work in that, and I'm not going to lie to you. Getting your data reviewed, there are some very, very quick wins that you can do, and you see some immediate value from. But other activities holistically, generally speaking, data quality, in my experience in certain organizations, isn't as great as they would like it to be. So then we move on to back to Microsoft Fabric, which is the ability to do analytics. So the tools that I've added in, and the visualization tools to do that analytics and visualize that that data is key. Now, I think I have, I'm hoping the audio you'll be able to hear. I have a short little video on AI running within the analytics. It's actually Copilot for Power BI. So I'll play that right now.
Copilot with Power BI transforms complex data into the clear and compelling communication of insights. Business intelligence plus artificial intelligence is a whole lot of intelligence, which enables you to have a two-way conversation with your data. For example, say you're a sales analyst for a retail company. You can converse with Copilot and ask it to create a report for you to help you understand the profile of your customers. Copilot does analysis of your retail data, then creates a report in Power BI that communicates back to you what is driving customer behavior. This isn't a static report, it's fully interactive, allowing you to dive deeper and Copilot also gives you options to adjust the output to get just what you're looking for. Your conversation turns to metrics and trends, and Copilot obliges with tailored visualizations of information. You now realize which products and services are driving repeat customers. The analysis is clearly communicated, but thinking about your wider audience, you realize that you want to make it have a more familiar style. So you ask Copilot to update the report so that it resembles the existing sales dashboard that you previously spent weeks creating. Within moments, the report is updated and matching the formatting and layout. Finally, to make the report even easier for your team to understand, you ask Copilot to add a rich text description of the data inside the report. This narrative summary is fully dynamic. And not only does Copilot highlight interesting insights from your data, but it provides citations from where in the report the data was taken. This summary will update every time the data is refreshed. Recognizing that data is your most valuable asset, having Copilot and Power BI as your intelligent partners enables you to unlock the true potential of your data.
So I think that's really, really compelling. I'm hoping the audio came through. Imagine you're a school and you have access to all that data, or imagine that you're a local government that can now have a conversation with your data, and it's a two-way conversation because you're discussing, you've got questions about your data. You also sometimes your question is, I don't know what questions to ask, just give me some insights, and it goes away, and in its response to answer it, it answers it using a visual medium. It's communicating it in graphs and in charts and visualizing that data. It's also giving you the text explanation around elements of it, but it's a two-way conversation with your data. When you can plug in all that data and you've now got a single interface to go and have a conversation with your whole organization's data, I think that's incredibly powerful.
Copilot with Power BI.
We'll skip on. We've sort of reviewed that you have the ability to use tools, the Synapse tools, that can do predictive analysis. It can actually make decisions. Now, initially, organizations will be loath to go and give a tool decision-making capabilities, but actually you can treat it as recommendations. I see these conditions are true. I've done my analytics. I believe the correct decision based on this information is X. And so you've got that within the what's called the Synapse suite of tools to help you improve that decision-making capability. When you're plugged into all your data, you're much more capable of getting real-time information because you're not having to go through various communication channels to be able to obtain the data that you need. You can actually plug it all in. It's all going to be available into a dashboard, and if the dashboard isn't quite exactly what you need, you just go and ask a Copilot and it goes and gets you the information. I think that's hugely powerful. Then we get on to AI, and this is where I'm going to geek out a little bit, but we've got a few minutes, so I will let the geeking commence. I was watching Silence of the Lambs when I wrote this slide, and I was thinking about you guys as in the audience, and there was this, he started quote this Marcus Aurelius, and I thought that's interesting. It was of a particular thing. What is it in of itself? What is its nature? And I thought that was interesting. And I thought, well, let's ask that for AI. Well, what it is its nature is accurate. You know, it creates accuracy, tends to be a lot more accurate than humans. It tends to be able to operate at faster speeds. So, for example, a human can read about 200 to 300 words per minute. An AI is capable of hundreds or thousands of times faster rates, depending on what it is they're reading. It's vastly more scalable. A human can only kind of read one thing at a time. An AI can read dozens of things at a time. You can leverage it into automation, and I'll touch on that in a moment. And it's very consistent. It doesn't get tired. You know, my work on a Friday probably isn't as good as my work on a Monday or a Tuesday because I get tired. I think that's human nature. AI doesn't suffer from human nature, and it's capable of in-depth analysis at not only faster, but its capability in that space is, for example, greater than mine. And the reason why organizations are interested is because all those are attributes you'd love to have in an employee. And that's going to help drive cost efficiency. So have a think about your you know, an AI is ultimately is mimicking the human cognition with all these kind of capabilities. Where would that have value to your organization? Okay, so if it is going to have a value, where is it going to have value? Let's look at it from a business process perspective. Let's analyze, let's look at Marcus Aurelius again and say, let's just decompose a business process. What is it? Almost any business process, and public sector organizations have many more than most organizations. The average is about 55 processes for an average organization. Public sector organizations have an order of magnitude more than that. But most business processes are a trigger. It's an email, a phone call, something happens on a piece of software. It can usually be expressed in as some kind of data that triggers a process. A process is made up of a bunch of tasks, and those tasks, to be able to be moved down the process, often need additional information to move forward. And that to move forward, there is a sequence to those tasks, and sometimes that sequence creates branching decisions, where you can different outcomes will now happen based on decisions that are made. And obviously you need broad resources, software, tools, people, and ultimately you'll get an output which ideally should be of a level of quality and measurable. So there are lots of different types of processes, but you know, if I bucketed them into three in terms of managerial, supporting, or operational. But if you were going to employ AI in your business and you've got business processes, think about the significance of the process that you might want to go and tackle. There's no point addressing and spending the time and effort to go and implement an AI solution for a process that's used twice a year. It's not going to necessarily drive the value. So think about the significance of the process. And then let's go and apply that to a real world scenario. Let's say what we've got here, a local government planning application. I want that. I have some inputs, I have some tasks. I'm going to need additional inputs in terms of surveys and documents and what have you to be able to move that process. There are conditions that need to be met. There are follow-ups that may need to be done. There are decision points, you know, granted, not granted, or decision is to loop back to an earlier stage because not all the right conditions have been met. It may be there's document libraries involved, and ultimately the goal is, in this particular case, you want a citizen to be able to ask for something and get a compliant answer. You know, the citizen wants it to be yes, but for the planning application, but it needs to, a no is a valid answer when it follows a set of compliant rules. Actually, that's kind of that business process. You can actually deliver a lot of that with Microsoft tools. Now, a lot of these tools, you've probably already got a bunch of them already. And you have them, you're paying for them, but you're not using them. So if I look at Power Platform, for example, a lot of Microsoft 365 SKUs come, in fact, the vast majority do come with the basic level of functionality for Power Apps. Some of them do need, you know, if you're using some called premium connectors or other features, do have additional licensing elements. But you can do a whole lot with your existing capabilities. So whether that input is a call, an email, it could be an automation that's monitoring a folder, it could be a virtual agent, which is a chatbot agent that's sitting on your website that is responding to humans. But instead of these numpty chatbots that are out there that people put on their website, which have something that's actually useful. I mean, I was on with HMRC yesterday, and their chatbot is just awful. You couldn't help me at all. I just couldn't understand beyond the framework of what I've given it. It just wasn't helpful whatsoever. But actually, AI-powered ones actually have a broader set of capability, so that can start delivering better outcomes for the user. Your tasks can all be automated with Power Automate. You can ask for additional input. I have an invoice that's come in, but I want to know what project code or nominal code that should go to. I'll build an app and I'll send that notification so Bill can just go, oh, this has come in. Yep, that goes to nominal code 123, submit, and then the process carries on. There are lots and lots of different tools that I'm not going to go into here. that cover off in the Power Platform space, and likewise in the Azure space, more enterprise versions of these kind of capabilities are available, where you can start mapping your processes, understanding, okay, well, if I was to have AI on this business process, I would use this technology stack. What sort of outcome would that give me? What sort of cost would that be? What budgets are available, either internally or funding available externally, to be able to deliver that? Because the goal is to deliver something that is better, faster, cheaper when it comes to AI. The other consideration with AI is the government have issued some guidance. Prevailing data laws apply. There isn't actually any specifically updated laws in the UK at the moment when it comes to actually not really anywhere in the world at the moment when it comes to AI. I know the EU have introduced their AI law, but it doesn't really take effect until 2026. So but there are guidelines, and I think these are useful and common sense ones. I actually kind of I think these are good. I like them. If you're going to adopt AI, you've got to have some kind of accountability to, in this, here it's saying consumers, but your stakeholders, your citizens, your patients, your students. It's got to be, it's about making it only have access to the information that it needs. It's not overly broad, and it's, in terms of AI's use of it, that it's got to have data that is suitably diverse, that it's not going to lock anybody or any particular group and show a bias against any particular organization. And there are a number of different, and these kind of guiding principles, there should be it shouldn't be exclusive, it shouldn't be dominating, it should be extensible and flexible with other organizations. It shouldn't introduce bias. And as a set of principles, I think these are actually very, very good from the government. So just taking a step back, and we're at the top end now. Think about the innovation when it comes to AI. How can AI benefit my organizations? How is it going to solve problems? What do I need to be able to solve those problems? What data will be useful in addressing that? What funding could be made available to make this vision a reality? How am I going to use those resources, and how am I going to work with partners that are going to enable me to achieve that, if that is something that you need? The reason why you might want to choose us is we've secured more funding than anyone else, any other expert MSP, than any other organisation in the UK, and we have, let's just say, we've got lots and lots of certifications and capability, and some of those are on the screen. Actually, there's many more than that can't fit on the screen. But we're a safe pair of hands in that regard. I appreciate I've run 1 minute over, but if there are any questions, feel free now to drop into the chat any questions you have. Adam, if you see any, typically we don't get them. The UK audience tend to be a lot shyer with these, but feel free to ask your questions now. Failing that, you had my contact details, Leon Godwin. I'm available on LinkedIn, and I would encourage you to follow me on there, or if you want to get in touch with the team, you can, and the contact details are on the screen. I offer free one-to-ones to examine your specific use cases in more details, and obviously we have a whole team of people that can help you. So given that I've not heard anything from Adam, I assume there are no questions. Have a wonderful day, and I will speak to you soon. Thank you.